Good morning, Salmon. It's a blessing to get to come and be able to preach for you all this morning. You know, this morning, Jill was reminding me that she remembers back when I first was coming here visiting my grandparents, coming and getting to be in her class, getting to learn all of stuff she was teaching and spend time in there and being an awkward, pudgy kid who back during then was just thinking, please don't look at me. I don't want to be looked at. I just kind of want to be here on my own back then. But here I am now, everybody looking at me. But at least they got me in a suit. Those who don't know me, my name is David Kish. I am a student at Freed-Hardeman University in Henderson, Tennessee. I am currently studying for my Bachelor's of Arts in Bible with the goal of continuing that to getting my Master's of Divinity, all with the goal of being a chaplain for the U.S. Army. So, throughout this summer, I had done an internship with Linda Road Church of Christ in Meridian, Idaho, to further get to know the job and get more familiar with what the task at hand is with a job like that. So, that's a bit about me. Let's get into God's Word today. Let's turn to Daniel 3 today. We're going to be setting up tent and camping out here for this morning. So, how hard is it to stand up to those who are against you? How hard is it to stand up against bullies or people who are attacking you for your faith? The chapter of Daniel 3 shows us that standing firm in our faith, even when it's hard, honors God. It also shows how God strengthens us and invites us His presence or into His presence in the fires that we face. God may not always keep us out of the furnace, but He will always be with us in the furnace. When we trust Him, no matter what the outcome, others will see the power through our obedience. Now, growing up, through school, elementary school, up to middle school, I had dealt with a lot of bullies. There was a lot of weight that affected my own experience, but the Bible account of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shows us that they had to deal with a bully as well. But they stood up to someone who was so much bigger that was pushing them around. You see, King Nebuchadnezzar had a bit of an ego. He really thought that he was the best king that could ever be. And because he was king, he thought he could get away with all of the crazy stunts that he did. Crazy stunts like creating a gigantic golden image of him for everybody to worship. Now, biblically, it gives the account of the size of this statue. And to show how much of an ego that he had, if it was made out of solid gold, nowadays that would be worth many multi-billions of dollars. Now, what could have also been the case is that it was gold-plated. But even then, if it was gold-plated, it still would be in the lower billions of dollars. Essentially, what he's doing is putting down the entire net worth of Taylor Swift for his ego. But King Nebuchadnezzar made a decree that everyone had to bow down and worship this image whenever the trumpets were played. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, in terms of God, only everything is wrong with that. But Shadrach and his crew, knowing what they were supposed to be doing in God's eyes, they stood firm on their beliefs. They refused to bow and listen to King Nebuchadnezzar, because that would be disrespecting God in idol worship. In response to this defiance, King Nebuchadnezzar was furious. He first questioned if what they were doing was true. He asked Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego if they were really disrespecting what he had said. They told him flat out, yes, that we are not bowing and worshiping your image. And he was so furious that he heated a furnace 7 times hotter than he normally heats a furnace, and told his best soldiers to throw him into that furnace. He was so unbelievably mad that he did not care that the furnace being 7 times hotter killed some of his best soldiers in his army. He was so mad he just wanted the 3 of them dead. He was just wanting to show off this royal power and flaunt this ego that he had, that he thought he was the best king that ever was. But he didn't get anything close to what he wanted. Instead, he sees an amazing sight. He sees 4 men standing in the fire unharmed, and the 4th man being described as a son, looking as a son of the gods. So he ordered them out, and all of them were just fine. They did not even smell like smoke. The 3 of them stood up to something big, but an important thing that we can observe with this is that they were young and they were still willing to stand up to a king for what was right. Why can't we do the same thing and standing up for our own beliefs of what is right? What are the things that prevent you from standing up for your own faith at times? Some things that prevent us are often fear or judgment from others or our own insecurities about being incorrect. But we must be willing to sacrifice for our own faith and stand firm. When we look at Daniel 3:16 through 18, getting into the word, it says, "We have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us. But if not, we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image." These 3 men refused to bow to this idol even when threatened with death. They said, "We do not need to defend ourselves in this matter. But even if God does not save us, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods and we will not serve this image. We will serve God. Don't compromise your own beliefs even when the cost is high." You see, the 3 of them had the ability to compromise. They could have said, you know what, we'll bow to this image, we will bow and respect what you're saying, but we just won't mean it. We'll do it and just not mean what we are doing. That, or they could have said, you know, God will understand if we just go along this one time so we can serve God another day. No, they, in that moment, even when facing death, said, we will not worship your image. You see, convictions aren't truly real until they are tested. Standing firm means choosing and doing what is right, even when it is costly to our own selves. Romans 3:5 says, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and hope. And hope does not put us to shame, but because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." So when I asked you what the things that prevented you from standing up for your faith, is that a cost? And is that a cost that you are willing to pay? We must choose that there is no compromise, even under pressure. There was 4 different types of pressure that we can observe that they were facing. There was political pressure that the king demanded worship. There was social pressure because everybody else was bowing and worshiping this image. There was more peer pressure because it was thousands of people who were all bowing and worshiping this image. But there was also a deadly pressure because there was a blazing furnace if they did not stand up for their faith, if they stood up for their faith and refused to bow to this image. Do you tend to go along with the crowd when there's pressure? Do you stand firm even if you stand alone? You see, standing firm in your convictions, even when there is pressure, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did, it means knowing what you believe before the test comes. You see, we must be willing to lose everything except our own integrity and choose to be loyal to God over the approval of people. We must have faith that doesn't depend on personal outcomes. We must be able to trust God. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, "No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it." We should be trusting God in these moments of trial more than anything else out there, because He provides circumstances and He provides an outcome in ways that we can never expect or predict. Daniel 3:17-18, going back to Daniel and continuing through the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, says, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us. But even if he does not, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the image. You see, they said our God is able to deliver us. They didn't question God's ability. They knew the power he had to control the situation. But even more importantly, they said, but even if he does not. You see, this shows a type of scriptural and spiritual maturity that we need to have. It shows the faith we should be striving for. They knew that the point wasn't if they died in the furnace. They knew the point was God was looking out for them. And they let go of the control and they handed the outcome to God. Their loyalty to God wasn't conditional. They didn't say, we'll serve God as long as he delivers us from this. They said, we'll serve God even if we die. They said, even if he doesn't deliver us, we will not bow. What they're saying in this moment is that my faith isn't for sale. I will not bow to fear, comfort, or convenience. They said, God is worthy of my life, or God is worthy of my life even when I don't understand God's plan. This kind of faith honors God in a world that tends to only serve God for material blessings or other kinds of blessings. It shows that they're willing to serve God in a world that says, I will serve you as long as I get this kind of outcome. If I get a job, if I get some illness to be healed, if this relationship that I had will be restored. It says that we will serve him sometimes. The world will say that we serve him sometimes because we think pain will go away. But the truth is, God doesn't always change our situation immediately or even at all. You see, God has a plan for you to have an outcome for you in ways you won't expect. This doesn't mean God isn't good or that God isn't with you. It means you're being invited into deeper surrender with God. It's like what Job said in Job 13:15, though he slay me, yet I will have hope in him. We should decide in advance to have the bravery like these three men had. We should have the bravery that through God, in these moments, God will prevent us from being thrown. Sorry about that. Let's backtrack a little bit. We should decide in advance to have the bravery like these three had through God when we face these moments that could prevent us from standing up for our faith. There we go. They grew up getting to hear about God's history in the nation of Israel. You see, these three men, they got to hear about God delivering Moses from the Red Sea, or the Israelites getting to be delivered from Pharaoh, and other ways where God had helped them in those people's lives. They got to hear this, and they knew that this was the same God who did that and the same God that could do this for them. What we can take away from this is that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shows us that faith is not like a contract for when God owes us something. It shows that real trust says God is good whenever I'm delivered from the fire or not, because the greatest victories in life often come after we let go of control and say, even if he doesn't deliver me. It shows, and when we choose to keep our faith anyway, it shows that type of spiritual maturity. But let's expand on how God is able to help in these moments of being afraid to stand up in the face of adversity. You see, when you read through this verse in Daniel 3:24 through 25, it says that, then King Nebuchadnezzar said, look, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the form of the 4th is like a son of the gods. You see, Jesus didn't just send an angel. Jesus was there in the fire with them. He showed up himself. When Jesus walks with those who stand for him. When you take a stand on your belief of your faith, you're never alone. The Lord who would one day die in our place stepped into the flames with these men. If you notice the detail recorded, you see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's faith allowed for the fire to just burn off the ropes of them, but not harm them. They didn't even smell like smoke. They came out entirely unharmed. Now, I really do wonder, and everybody kind of has that question that they think of in their mind, of something they want to go ask one day in heaven. You get to ask these people who we read about in the Bible, what was that like? And this is one for me. What did that look like? What did it look like for these three men just to be walking around loosely in the fire? It's one of those questions that I ask. What did that look like? I mean, were they just standing there? Were they walking around? Were they dancing around? What were they doing? It's one of those things that I do wonder about. But why do you think God sometimes let us go through the fire instead of delivering us from it? You see, God can use trials to burn off what is binding you and set you free in ways that being comfortable never could do so. When you stand up for what you believe in, your faith becomes stronger, and so do you become stronger. You see, God is not just sitting with us here in church. He is with us in the fires of our trials. You may not avoid the furnace, but you will never face the furnace alone. Something else to think about is how standing up to forces bigger than yourself can influence other people to do the same exact thing. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego took their own stand, they were not just making a private choice, they were making a public showing of loyalty to God. They didn't go unnoticed because Nebuchadnezzar ended up praising them and promoting them to their highest level. He went from threatening anyone who wouldn't worship his idol to threatening everyone who wouldn't worship God. You see, your faith may influence people that you never expected. It could be leaders, it could be critics, it could be the bullies that I talked about earlier. If you stand up boldly in defense of your faith, it could speak volumes to many other people. The people watching you go through the fires are sometimes the ones who need the most encouragement and inspiration to be what God has in mind for them. Even though the story focuses on three men, imagine the amount of encouragement that their decree made to all of the Jews around them. I like to make this point with a bit of a story. In World War II, there was a major general named Terry Allen. He had a nickname for the way he would run. The nickname was Terrible, so his name was being Terrible Terry Allen. He had this nickname because he stood up for his troops, and he was not one to be pushed around. You cannot push him around in the slightest because he will laugh at you when you did this sort of thing. He stood strong at all times. So Terrible Terry Allen was in command of the 1st Infantry of the U.S. Army fighting in Tunisia. It's a hard word to say. It's in North Africa. He was an example of someone who was not afraid of anyone, no matter how big and bad you were. But in April of 1943, they have just taken the town of El Guter. Now, in North Africa, there was heavy German resistance. So the Germans tried to take back the town with many men, tanks, as best as they could. But they were able to repel that attack just fine. Later that same day, U.S. counterintelligence operatives were able to crack the code for their radios, and they were able to listen in on everything the Germans were saying. They learned that at 4 p.m. that day, they were going to try again and try to attack them even heavier than they did before. And later then got postponed to 4:45. Now, this is incredible intel that Terry Allen had. He could prepare and be ready for the attack that was about to come. But he also saw a little opportunity to have some fun. So what he did is at 4:15, 15 minutes after the original attack was supposed to be, he sent a transmission, or he told his men to send a transmission to the Germans saying, "Hey, what are you guys waiting for? We've been ready since 4 p.m. Signed, the 1st Infantry Division." So, what he did was essentially say, first of all, you guys are bad. You guys are bad at what you're doing. We broke your code. We know exactly what you guys are doing. Second of all, we're not afraid of you guys. And third of all, they're pretty much just saying, oh, neener, come here, attack us again, and lose. What this did was severely demoralize the German troops, and they didn't even attack. They gave up. They said, we're not attacking this day, we're done. But what this also did was send a message to all of the U.S. troops who were fighting that our boss just went to the enemy, stuck out his hands and said, "Come at us. We're not afraid of you." This heavily encouraged the U.S. troops to keep fighting and keep on going through, and they were able to push through the Germans' line. You see, this is an example of how your influence can push people further into standing up themselves for what they believe in. These troops were heavily inspired because of one bold general. But like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Terry Allen used a frightening situation to show resilience and achieve an unexpected result that exceeded everybody's expectations. So as I close out today, I'd like to encourage us to think of what furnace are you facing right now, and what things are you going to say, "I will not bow to this thing even if blank." Think about what things you will not bow to and the things that you will stand up to when the time comes. You see, because God is with you in this fire. You aren't alone. You may feel like you are alone and that things are hard, but you will not be able to grow from these things that you are facing if you don't go through the fire. And God is with you and is in with you for your best interest and is interested in seeing the best that you will become to be. Now, if you're interested this morning in putting on Christ in baptism, we're all here to talk to you about that sort of thing. Let us know today as we sing.